In the quiet town of Hollow Creek, South Carolina, locals spoke in hushed whispers about the Hollow Creek Manor, an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. It had been empty for decades, but strange noises and unexplained sightings kept the curious at bay. One stormy evening, three friends, Lena, Chris, and Marcus, decided to explore the infamous house. It was New Year's Eve, and they wanted to start the year with a thrill. Armed with flashlights and a camera, they set off into the woods, laughing nervously to mask their unease. As they approached the house, its broken windows and sagging roof gave it an almost human appearance, like it was watching them. The friends stepped onto the rotting porch, the wood creaking ominously under their weight. Chris pushed open the front door, which groaned like a wounded animal. Inside, the air was heavy, damp, and reeked of mildew. Faded wallpaper peeled off the walls, and the furniture was covered in thick layers of dust. They explored cautiously, their flashlights revealing shattered mirrors, decaying furniture, and claw-like scratch marks on the walls. In one room, a dusty piano sat untouched. The sound that came out was warped and unnatural, echoing through the house like a warning. A faint whisper seemed to drift through the air, too quiet to make out. The group followed the sound, which led them to a door at the end of the hallway. A staircase descending into darkness. Chris: "Basement? Classic horror cliché. Let's check it out." Lena: "No way, this is where we turn around." But Chris had already started down the stairs, his flashlight beam barely piercing the blackness. Reluctantly, Lena and Marcus followed. The basement was colder than the rest of the house, the air sharp and metallic. The walls were lined with strange symbols, scratched into the wood as if by desperate hands. In the center of the room was an old trunk. It was locked with heavy chains, but the lock looked rusted and weak. "Chris, what do you think is inside? Treasure? Bones?" Before anyone could stop him, Chris yanked the chains loose and opened the trunk. The moment the trunk opened, the air seemed to shift. The flashlight beams flickered, and an overwhelming sense of dread filled the room. Inside the trunk was a bundle of old, decayed rags, and a mirror. Its surface was blackened, almost like liquid, and seemed to pulse faintly. Chris reached out to touch the mirror, but as his fingers brushed its surface, a shrill scream erupted from nowhere. The blackened mirror began to ripple, and a shadowy figure emerged from it, tall and unnaturally thin with glowing red eyes. The figure moved unnaturally, jerking as if it were being controlled by invisible strings. Its gaze locked onto Chris. The friends bolted up the stairs, the shadow pursuing them. Its movements were soundless, but impossibly fast. The house itself seemed to come alive. The walls groaned, doors slammed shut, and the air filled with whispers. Lena and Marcus made it to the front door, but Chris was pulled back by an unseen force.
"Chris, help me!"
Lena and Marcus turned, but the shadow had enveloped Chris, dragging him toward the basement. His screams cut off abruptly. The two remaining friends fled into the woods, the storm now raging above them. They didn't stop running until they reached the safety of their car. Lena and Marcus reported the incident to the police, but when authorities investigated, the house was empty. There was no sign of Chris, or the shadow. Weeks later, Lena found an old photo of Hollow Creek Manor online. It was a black and white image of the house with a family standing in front of it. In the corner of the photo, barely visible, was the shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. They say Hollow Creek Manor is still out there, waiting for its next visitors. Some doors should never be opened, and some shadows should never be disturbed. But on quiet nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear the whispers calling you back. If this story gave you chills, there's more where that came from. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more terrifying tales. Don't forget to ring the notification bell, because you never know when the next story will haunt your feed. Stay safe, and remember, some shadows are best left undisturbed.